Hello, this is Paul. Hello, this is Paul Bergin from the Mars Hill blog, which you can find at www.paulbergin, paulbergin.blogspot.co.uk. I'm continuing a series of vlogs about political heroes of mine who I think helped change society for the better. And today I'm looking at Robert Kennedy, the brother of the 35th President, John F. Kennedy. He was Attorney General during the Kennedy administration and later a senator representing New York. He was born in 1925, the seventh of 9 children and the third son of Joseph Kennedy, the later American ambassador to Britain, and Rose Kennedy. And he served in the US Navy towards the end of World War II. He became a lawyer. He served the US Senate in that capacity, and he worked for Senator Joseph McCarthy. The less said about that, the better. But he later made a name for himself in the racketeering investigations against the Teamsters unions, which was largely controlled by the mafia at that time. And Bobby Kennedy took on one of them, Jimmy Hoffa, in a series of exchanges at the Senate hearing, and it is fascinating to watch. He really gets to the point. He's direct, he's brutal. Hoffa's brutal in return. Neither let up. But Bobby Kennedy kind of made a name for himself in his own niche. Almost alongside his older brother Jack, who was John F. Kennedy, who was a senator at the time and shortly to become president. When John F. Kennedy did become president, Bobby became his Attorney General. He was also a key advisor to his brother, particularly over the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he helped broker an agreement with the Russians on a back channel to allow a gradual withdrawal of missiles from Turkey as a prerequisite to the Russians withdrawing their missiles from Cuba. He also was very prominent in bringing forward legislation involving the civil rights, and for that he deserves his place in history. It goes without saying that the assassination of his brother traumatised him immensely. What didn't help on the political front was that Kennedy's successor, his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, was someone Bobby Kennedy detested, and a feeling was mutual. And within a year, Bobby resigned as Attorney General and ran for the Senate representing New York in the 1964 elections. It's the first time he campaigned for himself and not for others. But he did well. He won, in spite of his lack of personal experience there. He worked in the 3 years he was senator to help protect his brother's legacy. He even to the point of being the first to ascend Mount Kennedy in Canada, which was named after his brother, and being involved in preparation of what became the John F. Kennedy Library, which was opened in the late 1970s. But Kennedy was prepared to show that he was his own man. He became increasingly against the war in Vietnam, acutely aware that his brother was the one who first sent troops there. He took on the issues of poverty and civil rights and fought against the poverty issues and stood for civil rights in the US, and that earned him a whole load of constituents among the poor and disadvantaged. But he also showed a moral leadership. Richard Nixon once said of Bobby Kennedy that he was like a Jesuit priest. I don't think that was entirely meant as a compliment, but I think it does go some way to explaining him. Moral conviction very much carried him in what he did politically, and he showed a great amount of courage and determination, and leading others to follow his example. In March '68, he took the step of announcing his bid for the presidency, even though Lyndon Johnson had yet to announce he was standing aside, which he did 15 days after Bobby Kennedy's announcement. He showed in his running for presidency not only tremendous success, he won 5 out of the 6 primaries he stood in, he also showed tremendous ability to diffuse difficult situations and potentially horrendous situations. When Martin Luther King was assassinated in April, Kennedy broke the news to a crowd of people in the city he was in. He showed a degree of empathy with what they're going through, mentioning his brother's assassination and the trauma that involved. There were no riots in that city that night, whereas there were in several cities throughout the US. It all came to a head in Los Angeles, the California primary. Bobby Kennedy won that primary, and he was expected to do extremely well, if not win, at the Democrat convention that August, and therefore be the Democrat candidate for president. Tragically, he was assassinated on the night of his success at the California primary, when you could argue he was at that moment at the very height of his political career. And he died the following day after being shot. When you look at that year of '68, it looks like unfinished business, and in many ways it was. But one of the great things about Bobby Kennedy was that his moral determination and his courageous ability to campaign inspired others. And there have been many American politicians since who have been inspired by Bobby Kennedy and have continued where he left off. Among them his younger brother Ted Kennedy, various Democrat politicians of varying personalities and persuasions over the years, culminating, I think, in Barack Obama, the 44th US president, the previous person in the White House. And so what looks like unfinished business with Bobby Kennedy is basically the start of being able to inspire others and starting crusades and ideals in the way that he did it that continue to this day.